very difficult in a free society, in a plural society, to go very far down that road. What one should be able to look to is a bit more self-restraint, but sometimes I feel that chance would be a fine thing.
Gordon Brown.
Well, I feel sorry for the Queen this evening, and let me just reiterate what I think, that she does an excellent job, and there's no question of abolishing the monarchy. But if anything emphasises the problems that we face with a press that is interested in the intricacies of the daily life of the monarchy, it's the problems I think the two children of the marriage have faced over the course of the last 2 days, under the glare of publicity, being photographed, the impact that has on them. And I think our newspapers have really got to consider what is the dividing line between what is in the public interest to report and what is merely scurrilous and in the long run will do damage not just to this couple who are trying to patch up, or who had been trying to patch up the marriage, but to their children as well. The press really do have to take the responsibilities far more seriously.
Jan Atkins, what do you think?
Well, I think that family life is the focus of public interest in the royal family. And I think it's not fair that anybody should be put in a position where they live their life on display. But secondly, I also think it's a false image, it's outmoded, and it reinforces outmoded notions of class and privilege. And I think it should be something of the past now.
Right, well, we're out of time practically, but Chris Patton, one commentator in the London Evening Standard tonight suggested a royal wobble always strengthens the Tories.
I'm not sure that is right, though Stanley Baldwin may have agreed with you, Peter.
Thank you very much. And that, unfortunately, is all we have time for tonight. Next week, Question Time comes from Birmingham, and on the panel then will be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Norman Lamont, Labour's Deputy Leader, Roy Hattersley, Simon Hughes, Environment Spokesman for the Liberal Democrats, and the Ulster Unionist, John Taylor. Now, before we go, if any of you would like to be part of the Question Time audience when we're in Glasgow on May the 7th, here's the number to phone, 071 284 4000. Glasgow, May the 7th, 071 284 4000. We'll then send you a questionnaire from which, when you send them back, we can begin making up the representative sample of the British public for that Glasgow programme. So, until next Thursday at 11 p.m. on BBC One, thank you for watching, and to you all, a very good night.
Drama for spring on BBC One. The growing pains of fostering proved too much for Ray Brooks.
Pat?
Yeah?
It's our first real foster child. Don't you think I should be here when she arrives?
Why? You won't when any of our own did.
I might have done if they walked through the front door fully dressed carrying a suitcase.
Back from the bush, the boys are running away from the past.
Daphne Dobbs.
And this is my other Ridge. Well, I had to name him after you.
New tenants open old wounds on the estate of Strathblair.
If I understand you correctly, you have promised the lease of Corribane to a complete stranger.
The door. Behind the door.
And enter the bizarre world of virtual murder. New faces, new series, new drama for spring on One.
Here on One now, Nick Ross and Sue Cook with an update on tonight's cases from Crimewatch UK.
Welcome back, and if you've been waiting up since Crimewatch came off the air, I'm inclined to say congratulations at this time. In fact, as the programme was drawing to a close, it looked as though there were some pretty exciting leads on several of the cases. That's still the case, but as so often happens on Crimewatch, the information that at first seems the most intriguing turns out to be mundane, and calls that seemed routine, some of them at any rate, now look like they really might lead somewhere. Sue?
Well, we'll start with the murder of 11-year-old Leslie Moleseed in Rochdale 16 years ago. At around midday on Sunday, October the 5th, 1975, Leslie set off to the local shops. She never returned. 3 days later, her body was found on the moors above a lay-by on a lonely Pennine road which links Halifax and the M62. And Mr Wilkinson, you seem to have been taking quite a lot of calls on this appeal.
Well, Sue, in relation to this incident, we've had over 100 calls into the studio here and an equal number into the incident room at Bradford. In fact, people might be experiencing difficulty contacting the Bradford room because they have been absolutely inundated, but I asked them to keep trying. The people will remain there till the last calls come in.
I'll give the phone number again in a minute. You had one call in particular which we mentioned in the main programme that looked quite promising. You've been checking that out?
Yeah, we did some inquiries in connection with that. It doesn't look as good as it first appeared. We're still pursuing it, but I don't want anybody to believe that we might have identified the offender by that call, because it doesn't look like it might be that way.
You wanted suggestions about the identity of the man who was seen by several people.
That's right. We are now concerned that we're having a lot of information identifying people, but there seems to be little information coming in connection with that description. We might be able to enlarge on the description, but it would help people. In 1975, he would have been in his 30s. He could have been anything between 5'4" to 5'8". He would have been plumpish but with sharp features. He would have been wearing a dark brown jacket with a light cardigan. It might have even been a mustard yellow coloured underneath and a lighter coloured pair of trousers. That man is a key person in this inquiry, and especially if it's linked with that Viva car.
Right. We need calls on the car and the blue van that was seen on the lay-by in those days. And I'll just give you, on that day rather, I'll give you the telephone number once again. It's 0800 212 392. It's a free phone number, and it's 0800 212 392.
Now, the photo call, and quite a number of the faces appear to have been recognised if the callers to our programme are correct, Jackie. Let's start with the chap who was sometimes known as the caveman, who police think might help them solve a murder.
Yes, Stephen Miller is the name. We've had a very good response, over 16 calls to the studio and lots of sightings, fairly recent some of them, but we do need to know where is he now, so please ring if you know.
We know where he is tonight, the lines are still open. The Bristol robber, pretty good pictures of a guy here who went into rob a place with a gun.
On the 11th of February, in fact, lots of calls, and definitely not only quantity but quality, I should say. 6 people giving the same name, so we're very hopeful of good news there.
Good. I gather the police are on the road on that one at the moment. Amanda Bernadette White, sometimes known as Amanda Scott.
Wanted in connection with 26 missing horses, an unusual one for us. 26 calls so far, lots giving sightings, and one giving a possible lead as to where she might be working. Again, callers who've had dealings with her recently, once again, we need to know where is she now. Please ring.
And Terry John Hammond, he was wanted, they thought he might have information on a robbery. I didn't see much coming in on this one.
No, very poor response, unfortunately. It was a robbery in Harold Wood in March last year. We do need to speak to him, so please, if you know him or where he is now, call us.
Well, our next case was the robbery at Preston's Jewellers in Guildford High Street 3 weeks before Christmas. Shortly after closing time, the manager was abducted. And then at about 7:15 that evening, bleeding profusely from the beating he'd received, he was frog-marched back to his shop to help open the safe. And we appealed for anybody who saw the 3 of them. You've had quite a few calls, I think, have you?
Yes, so we've had a very good response, and I'd like to thank the people for ringing in. But obviously, we'd still like to hear from people in relation to the cans of paint. They are definitely being sold somewhere, but where we don't know. So I would appeal for that. Any person who knows where the paint is to come forward.
It's very distinctive, and if you know these tins of paint will come from that robbery.
Yes, that's right.
There must have been loads of witnesses at the time. This was a busy Saturday evening, 7th of December, just before Christmas. There was a man outside the Olympus Sports Shop, for example, at about the time the robbery took place.
Yes, we still haven't heard from him, and I would like him to contact me so we can eliminate him from our inquiries. I also would like the 3 young ladies who are sitting on the bench, if they could contact me, because they may have seen something. And also I would like to hear from any person who saw the 3 robbers. We still haven't got very good description of them, and I would like for any person to come forward.
Please do call. This was a vicious crime. We need you to call if you can.
So, what about Aladdin's Cave? What's been claimed tonight? Eric?
Well, alas, nothing on the overmantel. I mean, let's face it, if that was missing over your fireplace, you would miss it. No two ways about it.
Very nice, though. Can I have it, please?
If you've got a fireplace big enough, Nick. But an eagle-eyed lady from Warwickshire spotted her mice and figures on the top rail there. We've also got several families who must be eating with their fingers at the moment because lots of claims for this canteen of gold-plated cutlery. Also, good news, we think, courtesy of a lady in Kent who recognised her peaches.
Rather nice plate.
Nice plate, that's by a man called Lockyer. And a few calls for this Dalton figure. Now, there are a lot of these about. This one is actually dated for 1930. You've got to be an expert to know these things, Nick. So that makes it
on the bottom.
It's got a stamp at the bottom. Yes, that's right. But also, we're hopeful for good news for our sort of little orphan Annie here. We've got a gentleman who's pretty sure that he's a guardian from days gone by.
Good. Incidentally, if you could recognise anything in the background now or have during this tracking shot along here, do give us a ring. The lines are still open. Sue.
Well, now to Incident Desk, and David Hatcher, one of our cases was a murder in Rotterdam. You needed to identify the victim who you thought was British.
Yes, we've had a number of calls on that, and 10 calls have given names which are going to be followed up because they're all of people who are English, known to have Dutch connections, and are missing and haven't been seen for quite a number of years.
Then there was a really shocking attack on a young woman in Brixton in London just a month ago. Did anybody recognise the description of the attacker?
Yes, a good response there with a number of names being given, and also some of the callers have given a surprising amount of detail to go with the names. That will help to narrow the search enormously.
And you were looking for a man in connection with a rape inquiry in Hemel Hempstead, and you described a particular T-shirt the attacker was wearing.
Yes, we've had over 40 calls on that one. 2 London courier firms have been mentioned as wearing T-shirts of that type, so that's another important clue to be followed up. We've also had a couple of names and addresses, and they're being checked out now, so officers are pretty optimistic there.
And finally, the robbery at a jeweller's in the village of Broadway in Worcestershire last month.
Yes, probably the best till last, Sue. 2 callers have given the same name, and another caller has phoned in and given the 2 names for the 2 robbers. So with any luck, we will clear that one up as well.
That's good. David, thank you very much.
Now the 2 murders in Lincolnshire, which police are connecting. 3 months ago, we asked for your help on the investigation into the death of an elderly man, Fred Maltby, who lived just south of Lincoln City. 2 men were noticed sprinting from his home just before 10 o'clock on the 1st of October. Then another man, Joe Rylat, was murdered at the end of January. That was about 2 miles away. Once again, 2 men were running from the scene. Stuart Clifton, at the end of Crimewatch, it looked as though there was one fairly exciting call from a woman, in fact, which I think now has pretty much been discounted.
Yes, there was some information that actually suggested a name. That person has been checked out and eliminated from the inquiry.
But you've got some other information which you're now really rather intrigued by.
Yes, there have been about 80 calls in total, but one particular man has rung from the south. He's a man that is known to me. He would only speak to me. He left the telephone number of a phone box in the south and asked me to contact him. I've been ringing, but unfortunately he's not been there. If he wants to speak to me with information, then I will be available tomorrow at the incident room at Lincoln on Lincoln 532222.
532222. Okay, and you know this man?
I know this man.
Okay, I saw quite a number of people had actually proposed names. Now, this is quite an odd couple for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's very, very rare that you get multiple murders.
That's right.
By a couple of offenders. And they're quite distinctive because one's tall, over 6 foot, possibly the other's short, under 5'7", perhaps 5'6".
That's right. There are, as I said, about 80 calls. Quite a lot of those calls have suggested names for the murderers. A number of calls have suggested people who wear a coat of the description that we put out earlier, and I'm quite intrigued and quite excited by some of the calls.
Good. Mr. Pippin, thank you. Sue.
Well, that is it for this month. We'll be back, of course, with more appeals and more news on these cases next month. The lines here to the studio are open for another 15 minutes, and all the police incident room numbers will be on the screen in just a moment.
Meanwhile, as we always say, don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
If you care what you watch and what you read, get the Radio Times. Share a comic experience. Radio Times meets the Merry White House Boys. Anthony Andrews talks about his powerful role in Screen 2's The Law Lord. And discover the gentle giant who's not quite so gentle. Radio Times reveals why pandas aren't always cuddly. Radio Times is the quality all-channel guide, the easy and the smart way to plan ahead. The Radio Times, Magazine of the Year.
Now, BBC One's nightly compendium of another day's campaign on the hustings.
Hello and welcome to On the Hustings, the programme that lets the politicians speak for themselves, for better or worse. It's often said that British politics is becoming more presidential, and certainly given the dominance of television, there's ever greater attention on the personalities and star quality of British party leaders. So how do they match up? Tonight we had the chance to compare the three main leaders as they addressed their first hustings rallies of the campaign. John Major addressed Conservatives in a vast blue-draped aircraft hangar in Manchester. He attacked Labour's tax policy as a devil's cocktail of incompetence and of malice which defies belief. Neil Kinnock hit back when he took the platform at a Labour rally in Birmingham. He said that his party had the policies to ignite recovery after the Tory recession. The Liberal Democrat leader Paddy Ashton was meanwhile addressing his followers in another part of Birmingham. He attacked both the main parties for pessimism of the will, while his own, he said, offered hope. Devil's cocktail, riddled with error, spiced with spite, a fast-spreading cancer. These were just some of the phrases which the Prime Minister dismissed Labour's taxation policy with in Manchester tonight. It was another side to the mild-mannered, rather one-dimensional John Major we've been used to since he took over from Margaret Thatcher 16 months ago. Clearly, Tory campaign managers decided it was time to show the Prime Minister can fight as well as care. So he delivered a vituperative attack on what he called Labour's unprecedented onslaught on the security of hard-working middle-income families. And the venue was a glitzy hustings in the round, more like a West End theatre than a hangar at Manchester Airport.
Ladies and gentlemen, during the 1980s, we Conservatives shaped a new Britain. A Britain where ambition is encouraged and success rewarded. A Britain where freedom is extended and people have more control over their own lives. A Britain which can afford to spend more than ever before on healthcare and on the social services. A Britain with an international reputation, once more a power in the world. One of the Conservatives' greatest achievements has been to bring down the rate of income tax, to reward hard work, success, and enterprise, to reward it so people at every level of income can keep more of the money that they earn. We're always being told that Labour are edging their way towards this kind of thinking. Well, they're edging their way pretty slowly, if they're moving at all. And this week, Labour's Shadow Chancellor has finally killed the notion once and for all that they were edging in that direction. But Labour's idea of Santa Claus is John Smith out of season. John Smith with a sack full of taxes. A sack full of taxes to kickstart not the economy, never the economy, but to kickstart the society of class and